Assalamu alaikum everyone. Walaikum salam. Good evening. क्या हाल है आप लोगों के? कैसे चल रहे हैं रोज़े? Is this topic related to O-level add maths? No, it's not. Normally, the integration that we have in AS math is related to add maths. In fact, it's a lot easier than add maths. But this topic in particular has nothing to do with add math. Sir, do you take A-level tuition 2023, 2024? Okay, for that the registrations will start in July. Okay. Sir, do you teach M1 or S1? I teach both M1 and S1. Sir, ठंडे ठंडे रोज़े गुजर रहे हैं. Okay, what city are you in? कहाँ पे है भाई इतनी ठंड? Okay, now before we start, I'd appreciate if you guys would like the stream, and if you haven't subscribed yet, do subscribe as well. Okay, and let's start in exactly, I think, 1 minute. Sir, S1 probability key practice. Okay, a couple of videos of S1 are in the pipeline. Are you talking about conditional probability, just normal or normal probability? Okay, Fahim, I'll try and do that inshallah. Yes, S1 videos inshallah starting tomorrow. You'll find S1 videos as well. Okay. All right, chale, let's start. Yes, you're right. There are no M1 videos or S1 videos, in fact, but you'll find them starting tomorrow, inshallah. Okay, a couple of videos of S1, I have recorded them. कल तक inshallah आ जाएंगी. Okay. M1 भी inshallah coming week में आ जाएंगी. You guys can suggest what topics you want me to make videos on. Okay, I'll make them inshallah. Okay. Now, so I have. अच्छा, wait a minute. मैं इसका. Yes, I will upload this later on. And I'll also share this PDF file with you guys, okay? Where you will have my notes as well as the questions that we're going to solve today, okay? So it says here, when a curve is rotated about 360 degrees along the x-axis or y-axis, we can find the volume generated through rotation. So there are two types of rotations that we have in AS. Number one is about the x-axis, and number two is about the y-axis, okay? जब x एक्सिस से रोटेट होगा तो हम y को स्क्वायर करके इंटीग्रेट करेंगे और एंड में पाई से मल्टीप्लाई कर देंगे. ओके, जब x एक्सिस से रोटेट होगा तो लाइक आई सेड y को स्क्वायर करेंगे, पाई से मल्टीप्लाई कर देंगे, इंटीग्रेट कर देंगे विद इन द लिमिट्स. ओके, बट व्हेन यू रोटेट इट along the y axis, which is although rare but still in the syllabus, so in that case we make x the subject. Okay, we square it and then we integrate it within the limits and multiply it by pi. Okay, theoretically it's very simple. Okay, but it's just that in between the algebra, that is where students usually mess up. Okay, so theoretically these are the four steps that you need to follow. Number one, you need to, this is if you're rotating it about the x-axis. Number one, you need to make y the subject in case it's not. Number two, you need to square the answer of step one, that is you need to find y square. And number three, you need to integrate y square within the limits a and b. As you can see, you have a and b. So when you rotate this part of the curve within a and b 360 degrees along the x-axis, you get something like this. It kind of looks like a loudspeaker if you I mean you can think of it that way. Okay, Then when you have the answer within the, once you plugged in the upper limit, subtracted the lower limit, you multiply it by pi. Okay, and this is what you will do over and over again. Okay, yeah, when we'll solve questions, you will see how easy this really is. So here's an example question, you guys can go over it. Now, one thing to remember that will save you a lot of time is this, that if you're rotating a line 360 degrees about the x or a y-axis, a cylinder is formed. And I just realized I have written the incorrect spelling for cylinder. So if you rotate a line about the x-axis or y-axis, okay, what's formed is a cylinder. So you can see over here, this is just like the whole thing visualized over here. So this is the line that if you rotate 360 degrees along the y-axis, you can see कि क्या बन रहा है, एक cylinder बन रहा है. Okay, so hence the volume can be found using the formula to calculate the volume of cylinder. Okay, so the volume can be found by using the होना चाहिए था, the volume can be found by using the formula to calculate the volume of cylinder. Okay, more about this later. When we do an example question, then you will know exactly what I'm talking about. Just like that, if you're rotating it about the y-axis, remember to follow these 4 simple steps. Number 1, you need to make x the subject. Number 2, you need to square the answer of step 1. And number 3, you need to integrate it within the limits c and d. जो भी y-axis पे limits होंगी, okay, जितना part of the curve आप rotate कर रहे हैं, आपने जहाँ से वो शुरू हो रहा है, that becomes your lower limit, जहाँ पे वो end हो रहा है, that becomes your upper limit, okay? And then you need to multiply the final answer by pi. Again, this is an example, you guys can go over it. What I want to do is I want to do some past paper questions, okay? So you guys get the hang of the kind of questions that we will have in past papers, okay? ये काफ़ी basic सी examples हैं, you guys can go over it later on. Okay, now here's a question. This is from October-November 2017, paper 1, variant 1. Okay, सवाल को पढ़ते हैं, let's see what it says. So it says here, the diagram shows part of the curve. So what if y is already squared? Okay, if y is already squared, then, you know, this saves you a lot of time. You don't need to, all you have to do then is you just have to integrate it. Okay. Sir, can you please tell physics and chemistry teachers? Okay, I have no idea. Chemistry का एक अच्छा channel है, हाँ. Chem Room 5 करके. Okay, that's a good channel. Okay, now, so let's solve this question. It says the diagram shows part of the curve y equals to 1 upon 4 x to the power 4 minus 1 defined for x is greater than or equal to 0. Find, showing all necessary working, the area of the shaded region. Okay. अब इसका area of shaded region कैसे निकलेगा? So first of all, this is a 3-mark question. So it's always a good idea to plan your answer. So if you want to find out the area of shaded region over here, what you need to do is you need to see what is it that, what are the limits exactly. So let's start from there. What are the limits? So if you look at the limits, you can see that one limit is 1 and the other is 0. So that means technically we need to integrate y within the limits 0 and 1. And one thing to keep in mind from the get-go is this. Again, will save you a lot of time. That is that since this is below the x-axis, what does that mean? That means कि इसका जो answer आएगा end में वो क्या आएगा, वो negative आएगा. Why? Because like I said, it's below the x-axis. Okay? So, and since we know exactly कि हम जो निकाल रहे हैं वो क्या निकाल रहे हैं, हम area निकाल रहे हैं, तो हम क्या करेंगे, हम end में अपने answer को positive कर देंगे. Okay? And so no rocket science there. Just keep your eyes and ears open and you'll be fine. So let's integrate this. 1 upon 2 x to the power 4 minus 1 within the limit 0 and 1. Because 1 upon 2 is a constant, so what I would prefer is, I would prefer that I bring it outside. Okay, so 1 upon 2 is outside, x power 4 minus 1 inside within the limit 0 and 1. Okay, so once you integrate it, here's what happens. 1 upon 2 अपनी जगह पे intact है. Okay, and now you're looking at x power 5 upon 5 minus x within the limits 1 and 0. Okay, so now let's plug in the limits. X power 5 में अगर आप 1 plug in करोगे, so that's 1 upon 5. All right, minus 1. So here you can see it's the upper limit plugged in. If you plug in the lower limit, which is 0, so 0 power 5 divided by 5 will be 0. 0 minus 0 will also be 0. So that's it. Everything will just straight away become equal to 0. Okay, so now you're looking at 1 upon 5 minus 1, which is equal to minus 4 upon 5. But don't forget that you also have to multiply this by 1 upon 2. Why? Because I took this constant outside. कोई भी constant हो, आप उसको बाहर लेके चले जाएं, ठीक है? It'll make your life easy. You won't have to deal with over and over again. Now when you do that, when you multiply minus 4 upon 5 with 1 upon 2, what you're looking at is minus 2 upon 5. Now like I said, since you're finding out the area of the shaded region, so your final answer will be 2 upon 5 square units. Okay, so this was a fairly easy question. 2 upon 5 square units is our final answer. Okay. Now, let's see what's next. Then it says, find, showing all necessary working, the volume obtained when the shaded region is rotated through 360 degrees about the x-axis. Okay, so first thing you should do is, you should underline where exactly you're rotating it about. So we're rotating it about the x-axis, so I'm going to underline x-axis, okay? Now, as soon as you see x-axis, here's what you should write down. That means we're going to integrate y square within the limits a and b. Okay, a upper limit, b lower limit. Khair, that doesn't really matter. Okay, but if you see over here, you can see that you already have the values. Okay, you already have the limits, and what are the limits? The limits are 1 and 0. Okay, so here you go. The limits are 1 and 0. So might as well replace a and b with 1 and 0. So here's the upper limit. Here's the lower limit. Okay. Now that means we have to make y the subject, and then we have to square it. Now, if we are somehow able to find out y squared directly, then that's great. Okay. Now let's rewrite the equation of the curve. The equation of the curve is y is equals to 1 upon 2 x power 4 minus 1. Now remember, हमारा objective क्या है? We're looking for y square. Okay. So what are we going to do next? We're going to square the entire thing. So if you square both sides in order to get y square, here's what happens. 1 upon 2, when you square it, becomes 1 upon 4. And now you're looking at x power 4 minus 1, the whole thing square, which I would suggest that you expand it. Okay? Asani ho jayegi. And when you expand it, of course, don't forget to use the identity. So x power 4 whole squared minus 2 x power 4 plus 1. And then in the end, don't forget to multiply the two powers together. So here you have 1 upon 4 x power 8 minus 2x to the power 4 plus 1. So notice that I've kept 1 upon 4 outside. Okay. And also, by the way, we have to multiply it by pi as well. Okay. Now, so here's what we're doing. We have enough space, so I'm going to continue from here. So we have to integrate within the limits 1 and 0 and multiply by pi y square. And what's y square equal to? Now you can see what y square is equal to. Y square is equals to 1 upon 4, bracket open, x power 8 minus 2x to the power 4 plus 1, close the bracket. Now, because 1 upon 4 is a constant, I would suggest you bring it outside. So now you're looking at 1 upon 4 pi. Okay. And at the same time, you integrate it. Okay. So x power 8 को integrate करेंगे तो क्या हो जाएगा? X power 9 upon 9. Okay. What happens when you integrate 2x power 4? You add 1 to the power, divide by the new power. What happens when you integrate 1? It becomes x. Now, what are the limits? The limits are 1 and 0. Okay. Now, let's plug in the limits. So if we plug in the limits, we have 1 upon 9 minus 2 upon 5 plus 1. Okay, in one bracket. And 0, you can anticipate कि 0 plug in करेंगे, so 0 upon 9, 2 into 0 upon 5 plus 0. So it's just going to straight away become 0. So let's work this out. 1 divided by 9 minus 2 upon 5 plus 1. So here we are. We're looking at 32 upon 45, which, don't forget, gets multiplied by 1 upon 4 pi. Okay. So 4 1s are, 4 8s are. So now we're looking at 8 upon 45 pi. And there you go. That's it. That's your answer. So if we summarize what we have done, number 1, made y the subject. Thankfully, it was already the subject. Squared it, integrated it within the limits, whatever the limits were, and then multiplied it by pi. And there you go. That's it. These are the 4 steps that you need to follow if you want to find out the volume by rotation. Yes, this live will be saved. Don't worry. Isn't that the area beneath the curve? Yeah, that's what we had to find. We had to find out the area under the curve anyway. Okay. All right, now part 3. Let's see what part 3 says. So part 3 is the same question. Okay. Part 3 is the same question, except now what you have to do is, now you have to integrate it about, now you have to rotate it about the y-axis. Okay, so first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to clear this up. Okay, I'm going to take a screenshot of it. All right, paste it over here. This is a 5-mark question. So what does that mean? That means K working ज़्यादा होगी. Okay, now, so Now bear in mind that we are rotating it about the y-axis. Okay, so let's underline y-axis. Y-axis ka matlab that we need to find out the volume that is obtained when this part of the curve is rotated. Okay, so excuse my drawing please, but you're gonna end up with something like this. Okay, obviously it's gonna be a lot more symmetrical, okay, but this is what you're gonna end up with. All right, so since we are integrating it about the y-axis, that means here's what I'm gonna do. That means we need to find out x, then square it. All right, what are the limits going to be? The limits are going to be 0 and minus half. Okay, this by the way is minus half. The minus sign is just overlapping with the line. So 0, since it's the greater value, becomes your upper limit. Minus half, since it's the lesser value, becomes your lower limit. And then in the end, we'll multiply it by pi. Okay, now immediately we have a new objective. The new objective is to somehow get our hands on x square. Okay, so let's rewrite the equation of the curve. The equation of the curve is y is equals to 1 upon 2 x bar 4 minus 1, cross multiply. 2y equals to x bar 4 minus 1, make x bar 4 the subject. So 2y plus 1 equals to x bar 4. Now there is no point in making x the subject and then squaring it. Why? Because you already have x bar 4. Since you already have x bar 4 and you know that you want x squared, so all you can do is just simply take the square root on both sides. So you have x squared, which is equal to 2y plus 1 to the power half. Okay, instead of writing it as square root of 2y plus 1, I've written it as 2y plus 1 power half. Okay, we'll make the integration part easier. Okay, basically it's now integration ready. That's what I like to call it. So pi within the limits minus half and 0, 2y plus 1 to the power half. Okay, now this is what we're integrating. Now be very careful, especially when you're dealing with fractions. So this becomes 2y plus 1 to the power half plus 1, which is 3 upon 2, and you will divide by the new power as well, which will be 3 upon 2 as well. And all of this will go inside. All of this will be within the limits 0 and minus half. Okay, now I will suggest that you do a bit of simplification first. And by the way, 3 upon 2 also gets multiplied by the differential of the bracket, which is 2. Okay, so completely forgot about that. So this 2 and this 2 gets cancelled out. And now before we finally plug in the values, let's write it nicely. 2y plus 1 upon 3 within the limits 2y plus 1 to the power 3 upon 2 within the limit 0 and minus half. Okay, now let's plug in 0. If you plug in 0, so 2 into 0 is 0, 0 plus 1 is 1. Above 1 ko kisi power pe laga dein, it's going to remain 1. So you have 1 upon 3. Okay, now let's plug in minus half. Okay, so 2 into minus half is minus half. Minus half plus 1 is 0, so 0 upon 3 becomes 0. Alright, so this is what you have, 1 upon 3 minus 0. And then don't forget that all of this is getting multiplied by pi. So your final answer is, the final volume that we are able to obtain is 1 upon 3 pi. Okay, and there you go. That's it. That's your answer. S1. Are you talking about live stream of S1? Well, starting tomorrow, inshallah, I'll be posting videos of S1. What if the power on x is negative? Okay, if the power on x is negative, then that's fine. You still add 1 to the power and divide by the new power. Okay, that's how it works. If it's an odd number, then it's the same thing. Okay, I think I understand what you're saying. So if it's, let's say, x cube, then you first take the cube root of it. Okay, then you will have x, and then you square it so that you have x squared. Okay, I hope that answers your question. All right, let's do another question. Now I want to do a question where, yeah, let's do this one. This question I really like. This one and this one as well. Ye bhi acha interesting sawal hai. So this is from May-June 2020, paper 12. Okay, it's a 5-mark question. So let's see what it says. Thanks, sir. We're grateful to have you. Thank you, Yusuf. I'm also grateful to have you guys constantly supporting the channel. So, thank you. Okay, now let's do this question. It says, the diagram shows part of the curve y equals to 6 upon x. The points 1, 6 and 3, 2 lie on the curve. The shaded region is bounded by the curve and the lines y equals to 2 and x equals to 1. Okay, so here's the shaded region. So yeah. Then it says, find the volume generated when the shaded region is rotated 360 degrees about the y-axis. Okay, now let's go back to what I mentioned earlier. Yeah, this picture. So yeah, there you go. So basically theoretically हमने क्या करना है, because we don't have to, if you look at the question, the region is not bounded by the curve and the y-axis. Okay, there's a line in between as well. अगर ये रीजन भी होता ना तो फिर तो बड़ा सिंपल सी बात थी, हम क्या करते हैं, वी वुड हैव टेकन 6 and 2 एज आवर लिमिट्स एंड जस्ट आँख बंद करके इंटीग्रेट कर देते हैं, ओके, स्क्वायर करके ऑब्वियसली, और फिर पाई से मल्टीप्लाई कर देते हैं. बट नाउ वी हैव टू बी अ बिट केयरफुल, ओके, बिकॉज नाउ what you need to do is you need to first find out the volume that's generated by the curve, and then from it you need to subtract the volume that will be generated by this line. Okay, volume that will be generated when this line is rotated 360 degrees. And you can see over here, when you rotate this line 360 degrees about the y-axis, तो क्या बनेगा, एक सिलेंडर बनेगा. ठीक है, और देख भी लो एक सिलेंडर कैसे बनेगा. Let me show you. So the cylinder that will be formed will look something like this. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so this is what you will get when the line is rotated. Okay, so what you need to find out is only the volume of the shaded region. Okay, so theoretically here's what we're going to do. We're going to find out the volume that is obtained, or the volume that is generated when the curve is rotated, and from it we need to subtract the volume that is generated when the line is rotated. And as far as the line is concerned, the line is equal to what, when you rotate it about the y-axis or even the x-axis, it's going to become a cylinder. Okay, why, you can see that over here. ये एक line को समझें आपने यहाँ पे fix कर दिया, ठीक है, and now when you're rotating it, what you will, the shape that will be formed will be a cylinder. Okay, now as far as the curve is concerned, now bear in mind that you're rotating the curve about the y-axis. Okay, so the second you see y-axis rotation hai, here's what I want you guys to do. Write down integral x square pi, and if you can see the limits, that's great, write down the limits as well. Now we can clearly see the limits are 2 and 6, so write that down as well, 2 and 6. इससे क्या होगा, इससे ये कि ऑब्जेक्टिव क्लियर हो जाएगा. ऑब्जेक्टिव ये हो जाएगा कि हाँ आप किसी तरह से एक्स स्क्वायर निकालना है. अच्छा, अब एक्स स्क्वायर देखते हैं कैसे आएगा. So you can see that y is equals to what, y is equals to 6 upon x. That means if you make x the subject, x is equals to 6 upon y, which means if you square it, you're looking at 36 upon y square. And if you write it in a way so that it's easy for you to integrate, that's going to be 36 y to the power minus 2. Okay, making it integration ready. Alright, so now here's what we're looking at. We're looking at 36 y to the power minus 2 multiplied by pi within the limits 2 and 6. Okay, so how do you integrate a power function? You add 1 to the power, minus 2 plus 1, you divide by the new power, minus 2 plus 1, which is minus 1, and then you apply the limits that are 6 and 2. Okay, now I would suggest that you simplify this. Minus 36 into y to the power minus 2 plus 1. So if you write this nicely, this becomes minus 36 upon y. Okay, y पे power negative 1 होगी, उसका positive करने के लिए you can shift it in the denominator. Okay, now you plug in the limits. So first you plug in the upper limit, so that's going to be minus 36 upon 6. Okay, let's just make a bracket around it. Minus, then you plug in the lower limit, so that's going to be minus 36 upon 2. Let's make a bracket around this as well. So this becomes minus 6. Minus minus पहली बात तो plus हो जाएगा, 36 upon 2 is 18. So what are we looking at? We're looking at 12, and don't forget that we had to multiply this by pi. So we're looking at 12 pi. So as far as the curve goes, that's equal to 12 pi. Okay, let's drag this over here. Now let's talk about the line. Line, as we saw earlier, is basically going to be equal to a cylinder. But the thing is, what will be the dimensions of the cylinder? That's important. So as you can see, in order to find out as you should know from prior knowledge, in order to find out the volume of a cylinder, we need the radius, which is what? Which is equal to 1, and we need the height. Now what's the height of this cylinder going to be? It's going to be 6 minus 4, which is equal to what? 6 minus 2, which is equal to what? Which is equal to 4. Okay, now let's find out the volume of the cylinder. इसके dimensions लिख लो यहाँ पे, तो काम आसान हो जाएगा. R equals to 1 and height equals to 4. So the volume of cylinder is equals to pi into 1 square into 4. So the volume equals to what? Volume equals to 4 pi. Okay. Now you find out the area of the shaded region. So that's 12 pi minus 4 pi, which is equal to what? Sorry, volume of shaded region. I think I said area. So that's equal to 8 pi. And there you go. That is your final answer. अब देखें इसको गौर से. And let me know if you guys have any questions. Volume rotation add maths में नहीं है. Sir, can you please make a video about functions? Okay, yes, functions also is in the pipeline, don't worry. How many significant figures? 3 significant figures, always. No, rotation is not in add maths. Okay, I've already answered that. My batch next year will start, registrations will start in July. Okay, and classes, official classes, inshallah, will start in August. AS का normally थोड़ा देर से शुरू होता है. Okay, mid-August. All right, so here's another question. This question is very recent. It's kind of mixed up with circles as well. Okay, so this is from February March. Okay, this is the Indian variant. Okay, the Indian session actually. February March is a session that's only held in India, and paper 1 variant 2. All right, let's see. So it says here, the diagram shows the circle with the equation x minus 2 whole squared plus y squared equals to 8. The chord AB of the circle intersects the positive y-axis at A and is parallel to the x-axis. Okay, so iski baat kar rahe, this is a horizontal line, that's why it's parallel to the x-axis and it's intersecting at A. Find by calculation the coordinates of A and B. Okay, one thing that we can say for sure is that A will have x coordinate 0 and definitely there's going to be a y coordinate. Okay, and since A is lying on the circle, you can simply plug in 0 in the equation of the circle and find out the y coordinate. So 0 minus 2 is minus 2. Minus 2 squared is 4. So I've skipped a step over there. So y square equals to what? Y square equals to 4. That means y is equals to plus minus 2. Now, if y is equals to plus minus 2, obviously the y of A will be positive 2. So we have the coordinates of A 0, 2. Okay. So A, as you can see, is above the y-axis, above the x-axis, so definitely it's going to have coordinates 0, 2. Now, since AB is a horizontal line, again, one thing that we can say for sure is that whatever the x-coordinate may be, the y-coordinate will be 2. Why? Because it's on the same horizontal line. So here's what we're going to do. We have the equation of the circle, right? X minus 2 whole squared plus y squared equals to 8. So what you need to do now is you need to plug in 2 in place of y. So x minus 2 whole squared plus 4 equals to 8, which means x minus 2 whole squared equals to 4. And now what we need to do is we need to take the square root on both sides. Please don't start expanding it. You'll waste a lot of time. So x minus 2 is either equal to 2 or x minus 2 is either equal to minus 2. When you solve this, you get x equals to 4. And when you solve this, you get x equals to 0. Now, obviously, b को गौर से देखो, इसका x 0 तो होने से रहा, ये basically आपको a का x coordinate बता रहा है. So, b should have x coordinate as positive. That means the coordinates of b are 4, 0. And there you go. This was more like a simultaneous or equation of circle question. Okay. Sir, why couldn't we integrate line instead of using the cylinder formula? You can do that. You can totally do that. You can find out the equation of the line and you can integrate it. You will get the same answer. But I prefer using the cylinder because फिर वो pi की terms में आ जाता है, and then it's easier to add or subtract. Okay. Now, like I said, do remember that you can integrate the line as well. Okay. All right. Now this is the reason mainly why I'm solving this question. That is the integration, the volume generation part. Okay, so here it says find the volume of rotation when the shaded segment bounded by the circle and the chord AB is rotated 360 degrees about the x-axis. Okay, so what are we looking at? We're looking at x-axis. So immediately what you need to do is integral of y square within the limits. If you can find the limits, well, I think we can find the limits. Okay, in fact, we've already found the limits. We know that the value of b, the x coordinate of b is 4, and clearly the x coordinate of a is 0. So let's write down the limits as well. Okay, and multiply it by pi. Now thankfully, here if you look at the equation, you already have y square. Okay, so there's no point in taking the square root of it and then squaring it again. Just write it as it is. So 8 minus x minus 2 whole squared. Now if you want, you can expand this as well and then simplify it, or if you want, you can use it as it is. Okay, I wouldn't prefer to expand this in this case. Why? Because you have a linear function inside the bracket, so it's going to be easy to integrate it. Okay, in the previous question, the reason why I expanded it is because we did not have a linear function inside the bracket. That's why I thought it would be difficult to integrate it. Okay, Kangya? Yeah, this one. This is the reason why I expanded it in the previous question. In this, I'm going to avoid doing that. Okay. Yeah. So, here we go. Integral of 8 minus x minus 2 whole squared within the limits 4 and 0 multiplied by pi. Okay. पहले तो इसको हम चुपचाप ज़रा इंटीग्रेट करते हैं. So 8x minus x minus 2 whole thing cubed divided by the new power, which is 3. Okay. And now we're going to plug in the limits 4 and 0. Okay. Now if you plug in 4, so 8 into 4 is 32. Alright. Minus 4 minus 2 is 2. Okay. 2 को cube करोगे तो क्या आ जाएगा? 8. 8 upon 3. तो ये आ गई the value with the upper limit plugged in. Okay. Now let's plug in the lower limit. 8 into 0 will be 0. Minus 0 minus 2 is minus 2. When you cube it, you get minus 8 upon 3. And here you have this with the lower limit plugged in. So what you're looking at is this. 32 minus 8 upon 3 minus, so minus minus will become plus, and then eventually when it gets multiplied by minus, so minus 8 upon 3. Okay, so let's simplify this. 8 upon 3 plus 8 upon 3 and 32 minus answer. So what you're looking at is, you're looking at 80 upon 3 pi. Now 80 upon 3 pi is basically part of the circle, is the volume that will be obtained when this part of the circle, this arc you can say, is rotated 360 degrees. Okay. Now theoretically, what we need to do is circle minus the line. Now like I said earlier, and someone pointed out, you can integrate the line as well, but I prefer going with the cylinder method. So the line here is equal to the cylinder such that कि उसके dimensions क्या होंगे? देखो ये cylinder मिलेगा ना जब हम इसको rotate करेंगे. Okay, यहाँ पे भी यही चीज़ बनेगी. So इस cylinder का जो radius होगा वो एक जो coordinates हैं वो है 0,2. That means the radius will be 2. और height जो है वो ये horizontal length होगी. Height जो होगी वो क्या होगी? वो 4 के बराबर होगी. So height equals to 4. Alright. Now the volume is equals to pi r square h. So what's the volume equal to? This is equal to 16 pi. And then in the end, all you have to do is just subtract the 2. So 80 upon 3 pi minus 16 pi. So let's see what we're looking at. 16 times 3 is 48. 80 minus 48 is 32. So 32 upon 3 pi. And there you go. That's your answer. Yes, when you make x the subject, that means y coordinates will be your limits. Okay. When you make y the subject, that means the x coordinates will be your limits. Because when you're integrating y, you're doing it with respect to x. Okay. So that's why your limits are x values. When you're integrating x, you're doing it with respect to y. That's why your limits are y values. Sir, give me some motivation to study. Okay. क्या motivation दूँ मैं आपको यार? Well, think about how good you feel, inshallah, when you get a good grade. Yeah. And think about all the opportunities, inshallah, that you will have once you get a good grade. So use that as motivation. Okay. Motivation से ज़्यादा आपको discipline की ज़रूरत है. Okay. Motivation थोड़ी देर के लिए होगी, आप बहुत अच्छा पढ़ेंगे, फिर ख़त्म हो जाएगी, फिर क्या करेंगे? So you need to get yourself, you need to make a nice routine for yourself and then follow it. Okay. Walaikum salam. Sir, isn't part A B 4,2? Okay, what have I written? Oh yeah, you're right. It's 4,2. Thank you for pointing that out. कौन था ये? Ishal. Thank you. Okay, thankfully, nothing went wrong because of that. But yeah, it's 4,2. Thank you. So what is the past paper order should what is the past paper order should we do? Okay, so start from the recent one. Start from 2022 and then go backwards. Okay, so that you're aware of what's the recent pattern, because A level का syllabus 2020 में change हुआ था. There were a couple of things removed. Vectors was removed. Equation of circles was added. So you don't want to be. What you want to do is you want to practice the questions that have been recently added. So can we use Casio ClassWiz? Yeah, of course you can use Casio ClassWiz. Yeah, I mean, as long as you're not using it on O-level math paper 1, then of course you can. Okay. So how do you imagine the shapes they will form when? Okay, that's a good question. So देखो, as far as this cylinder की जो मैं बात कर रहा हूँ is concerned, so imagine this. Imagine that you're rotating this line a full 360 degrees, and after every fixed interval, okay, you're taking a picture of it. Okay, so imagine that. Imagine you're rotating this line. Let me erase this for a second. Okay, so imagine this. Imagine ये एक line है, ठीक है, and imagine कि ये यहाँ से इन दो points से fixed हुई हुई है, ठीक है, and imagine that you're rotating this line a full 360 degrees, and after every interval, you're taking a picture of it. Okay, or you can say that it's rotating and it's leaving trails behind. Okay, so when you have like a lot of trails, what will that shape look like? That shape will look like a cylinder. Okay, and this is like the visualization of that. All right, it's not like it's going to be different for every, obviously it's going to be different for every other shape, every other curve, but line का एक ही होगा. Okay, एक line है, एक fixed point से जब आप उसको rotate करेंगे, तो देखो ये जो pencil है white वाली, okay, ये पूरा घूम के क्या बना रही है? ये पूरा घूम के एक cylinder बना रही है. Okay, so you don't have to imagine it over and over again. Just remember that there's a standard that if you rotate a line, like I've written over here, about the y-axis or even the x-axis, the shape that will be formed is a cylinder. Okay, and this is something that will help you visualize that. Alright, I hope that helps. Sir, can you show how to find the domain and range? Okay, we'll do that later. Alright, we'll do that later. Alright, now let's do this one last question. Okay, then we'll call it a day. Let's see what this says. It says the diagram shows the circle x square plus y square, which is equal to 2, and the straight line. So shouldn't we keep recent paper for later practice? Well, what you can do is you can leave the variant. You can leave the variant out. All right. Do one variant. 12 kar lo, 12 paper 1 variant 2 kar lo. Leave the other variant for practice. All right. So it says here the diagram shows the circle x square plus y square equals to 2 and the straight line y equals to 2x plus 1 intersecting at the points A and B. The point D on the x-axis is such that AD is perpendicular to the x-axis. Okay, find the coordinates of A. Okay, it's giving you 4 marks for just solving 2 equations simultaneously. I think that's a great deal. So one equation is x square plus y square equals to 2. Okay, and the other equation is y is equals to 2x minus 1. So we plug in the equation of the line and the equation of the circle. So 2x minus 1 whole squared equals to 2. So we have x squared plus 4x squared. Please do not forget to use the identity. That's not expected from A-level students. So x squared plus 4x squared is 5x squared minus 4x minus 1 equals to 0. Okay. Now when you solve this by, let's say I use the, so I'm going to save some time and use a calculator over here. Although you can do this through middle term breaking, it's pretty easy. So x equals to 1 and the other value of x is minus 1 upon 5. Now clearly you can see A is a point where x has to be positive. So we're going to ignore the minus 1 upon 5 and we're going to stick with 1. Now in order to find out the value of y, you plug it in the equation of the straight line. Although you can do it in the equation of the circle as well. Okay, but this one's easier. So now you have the coordinates of A, 1, 1. And you get 4 marks for this. Wow. That's brilliant. Okay. So there you go. We have the coordinates of A. Okay. Now that tells us quite a few things. It tells us not only the coordinates of A, but it also tells us the coordinates of D. The coordinates of D will be 1, 0. Okay. I'm pretty sure that we're going to need them later on. Now here's part B. Part B says find the volume of revolution when the shaded region is rotated 360 degrees about the x-axis. Give your answer in the form of pi upon A, B under root C minus D, where A, B, C, and D are integers. Okay, now let's go back. Let's take a screenshot of this so we don't have to do a lot of back and forth. All right. Now, first things first. Since it's saying x square, okay, what are we going to do? We're going to write integral of y square pi. Now, let's see if we have the limits. Okay, yeah, we do have the limits. Okay, what are the limits going to be? The limits are going to be, in fact, no, we don't have the limits. Since this is about the x-axis, so x-axis की हमारे y की हमारे पास limits हैं. Let's see. एक value है, एक value नहीं है. ठीक है? So we have the value of d, which is 1, but we don't have this point right here. Okay? Now we need to find out this point. Okay. So how do we find this out? Let's see. So what we can do is, this is the point where the curve is cutting the x-axis. By the curve, I mean the circle. Okay? So that's what we need to find. The equation of the circle is x square plus y square equals to 2. Okay? So this is a point where the curve is cutting the x-axis. So what we're going to do is we're going to plug in y as 0. So x square plus 0 equals to 2. That means x square equals to 2, which means x, although is equals to plus minus square root of 2, but obviously we're going to go with the positive one because it's on the positive side. Okay? So now what we have is we have the limits. Okay? We have the upper limit, which is under root 2, and we have the lower limit, which is 1. Now, let's bring this over here. Now, thankfully, since you have the equation of a circle, that means y is already squared. Okay? So x square plus y square equals to 2. That means y square is equals to 2 minus x square. Okay? Now, this is what I'm going to integrate. I'm going to integrate y square, 2 minus x square, within the limits under root 2 and 1. And I'm going to multiply it by pi. Okay? So let's integrate this carefully. So we have 2x minus x cube upon 3 within the limits under root 2 and 1. Okay, now notice that the question is asking us to give our answer in surd form, pi and surd, everything as it is. So if you plug in the upper limit, you have 2 under root 2. Now what happens when you cube under root 2? You get under root 8, which by the way is 2 under root 2. Okay, and now let's plug in the lower limit, which is 1. So 2 into 1 is 2 minus 1 cube upon 3. So there you go. Now let's simplify this, see what do we get. So this is 2 under root 2 minus 2 under root 2 upon 3. Okay, how did I get 2 under root 2? I'll write it over here. Under root 2 cubed is equal to under root 8, which is equal to 2 under root 2. Okay, so there you go. And minus 2 minus 1 upon 3, if you simplify this, so 2 into 3 is 6, 6 minus 1 is 5, so 5 upon 3. Now this requires a bit of simplification. 3 into 2 is 6, 6 minus 2 is 4, so 4 upon 3 under root 2 minus 5 upon 3. And don't forget that all of this is being multiplied by pi. Now let's see how the question wants us to give our answer. The question wants us to take the common denominator outside the bracket. So what's the common denominator? It's 3. So if I take 3 outside, so that's going to be pi upon 3, 4 under root 2 minus 5. And there you go. That is your final answer. Sir, can you explain how we got root 2? Okay, so root 2 ऐसे आया कि हमने देखो, basically what we're doing is we're integrating, we're finding out this region, right? We're finding out this region. So we need, these two are going to be our limits. So we're finding out this region. Okay, so these two are going to be our limits. So we already have the coordinates of d. It's going to be 1. Why? Because when we worked out the value of the coordinates of a, it turned out to be 1 comma 1. Now since d is vertically lined up with a, so that means d ka x coordinate 1 hoga, y coordinate obviously 0 hoga. Now this is the point. Okay, let's call this point x. There will be an x coordinate and y will be 0. So what I did was I plugged in y equals to 0 in the equation of the circle, and then we got the x coordinate. Okay, I hope that helps. Alright, then comes part C, which says find an exact, and this is the answer to part B. Part C says find an exact expression for the perimeter of the shaded region. Okay, अब ये थोड़ा एक हट के सवाल है, because now you have to find out the perimeter of the shaded region, which is normally not the case in integration. It's usually the case in circular measure. Okay. So let's find out let's see what we're going to do in order to find out the perimeter of the shaded region. Now, as far as one length is concerned, so this length is pretty straightforward. It's 1. Why? Because A has y coordinate 1 and D is on the x-axis, so that means the y coordinate will be 0. So here's 1. Okay. Then this length right here, the one that I'm outlining in blue, ये end हो रही है root 2 पे और start हो रही है 1 पे. So that means this will be plus under root 2 minus 1. Okay, it's like it's starting at 3 and going till 4. So 4 minus 3, that's 1 unit. Okay, except that this is starting at 1 and going till under root 2. So under root 2 minus 1. Now comes the tricky length. The tricky length is actually the arc length. Okay. अब arc length निकालने के लिए we need to first incorporate this in a sector. Now since this is a circle with center origin, that means I can do that very easily. Okay, this right here is our sector. Okay, now this sector is such that इसका जो radius है ना, इस sector का radius बराबर है किसके? Under root 2 के. Why? Because इस circle का ही radius under root 2 है. Notice that x square plus y square equals to r square. Alright, so if r square equals to 2, that means the radius is equals to what? The radius is equals to under root 2. Now how do you find out the arc length? Any arc length for that matter. It's s equals to r theta. Okay, so as far as the radius is concerned, we have that. Okay, now what's left is finding theta. अब theta निकालने के लिए हमें थोड़ा creative होना पड़ेगा. कैसे अभी बताता हूँ. So let me switch to a different color. This length is 1 unit. Okay, from O to D. AD is also 1 unit. Okay, now that means what kind of a triangle are we looking at? We're looking at an isosceles triangle. So OAD is actually an isosceles triangle. ISOCELES. Okay, I don't know how to spell isosceles triangle, but yeah, you get the point, right? Which means that angle AOD, if one angle is 90 and you know that it's an isosceles triangle, that means it's going to be, the other two angles are going to be 45 degrees. How? 180 minus 90 divided by 2. Except that we're not going to take it as 45, we're going to take it as pi upon 4. Okay, because we have to take it in radian mode. So now that we have the angle, we can now find out the arc length as well. So under root 2 into pi upon 4 becomes the arc length. So now that we have everything, all we have to do is just put it all together and find the perimeter. So I'm going to switch to a different color. Perimeter equals to 1 plus under root 2 minus 1 plus under root 2 pi upon 4. So this plus 1 and this minus 1 gets cancelled out, and now you have under root 2 plus a pi. आपकी मर्जी, आपने पहले लगाना है बाद में लगाना है. Since they're being multiplied, it makes no difference. So this is your perimeter of the shaded region. Okay, and there you go. That's your answer. Okay, sir, are you going to start O-level past paper session? I will be streaming past papers on YouTube. Don't worry about that. Sir, can you explain the case where we subtract line from the curve? I already did that. I already explained. Solved 2 questions like that. Okay. In the description, the link to the document and notes isn't there. Okay, so once I'm done with the stream, then I'll share it with you guys. I will share it once I'm done with the stream. Okay. Sir, I'll be giving CIs next year. Can you please tell specifically for math, how should I prepare and through which resources? Okay. I'll make a video on that. I can't answer that so quickly. But just make sure you have past papers to begin with. Past papers and all the syllabus D books. Book 1, book 2, book 3, book 4. Okay. Should I do topicals or yearly? By now, you should be doing yearly past papers. Okay. No matter what, you should be doing yearly past papers. All right. Okay. So since there's just one question from this worksheet that's left, okay, so might as well do that. 2 questions actually. Okay. So let me pick the more complicated one. Okay, I'm going to solve this one because it's a 6-mark question. Okay. Sir, S1 and P3 कब पढ़ा रहे हैं? S1? What do you mean? कब पढ़ा रहे हैं? I am teaching S1. So here's question number 9. This is also pretty recent. It's May June 2021, paper 12. Right? Let's see what it says. So it says here, the diagram shows part of the curve with equation y square equals to x minus 2. Okay, so y square is already the subject. Maybe that will help. Let's see. And the lines x equals to 5. So this is the vertical line, x equals to 5, y equals to 1. That's this line right here. The shaded region enclosed by the curve and the lines is rotated 360 degrees about the x-axis. Okay. Find the volume obtained. Alright. Now before you can find out the volume obtained, obviously you need to find out the limits. Okay. So how do we find this out? This, as you can see, is a point of intersection of the line and the curve. So one thing we can say for sure is that we don't know what the x coordinate is, but the y coordinate for sure is going to be equal to 1. So in the equation y square equals to x minus 2, all you have to do is just plug in y equals to 1. Okay. So when you do that, you have 1 square, which is equal to 1, and then that's equal to x minus 2. So if you solve for the value of x equals to 1 plus 2, which is equal to 3. Okay. So now that we know what our limits are, because we're integrating it about the x-axis, that means we're going to integrate y square within the limits 5 and 3 and multiply it by pi. Okay. And not only that, from it we will minus the volume of the cylinder. Why cylinder? Because this line, if you rotate 360 degrees, like I explained earlier, what you get is a cylinder. Okay. Something I drew over here, although this is quite hideous, but yeah, this is a better representation of what I'm saying. Okay. अच्छा, cylinder के बारे में बाद में बात करेंगे. First, let's get the volume of the curve sorted out. So y square, we already have what y square is. So that's x minus 2 within the limits 5 and 3 into pi. So if you integrate it, this becomes x square upon 2 minus 2x within the limits 5 and 3. Okay. So 5 square is 25, 25 upon 2 minus 10. That's the upper limit plugged in. Okay. 3 square is 9, 9 upon 2 minus 3 into 2, which is 6. That's the lower limit plugged in. So 10 into 2 is 20, 25 minus 20 is 5, 5 upon 2. I would strongly advise कि आप calculator use करें. Sometimes when I'm using mental maths, I mess things up. So you guys don't want to do that. That'll just be throwing away marks. 2 into 6 is 12. 9 minus 12 is minus 3. So minus 3 upon 2. So 5 minus 3 upon 2 becomes 5 plus 3 upon 2, which means 5 plus 3, that's 8. 8 upon 2 is 4. So 4 pi is the volume that we obtain when we rotate the curve 360 degrees about the x-axis. Okay. Now let's talk about the cylinder. Okay, which is basically the line. इस सिलेंडर का रेडियस क्या होगा? सिलेंडर का रेडियस 1 होगा और हाइट क्या होगी? हाइट होगी 2. Okay, so radius is 1 and height equals to 2. So what we do is we do pi r square into h. This formula saves you a lot of time. I mean, I'm not in complete favor of integrating the line because it's a lot of, not a lot of working, but yeah, more than this. So this is what? This is 2 pi. Now there you go. 4 pi minus 2 pi gives you the answer, which is 2 pi. And that's it. Question solved. Is there any other part to it? No. There is no other part to it. Day in life video. Maybe in the summers when my life is more than just teaching. Okay. अभी बनाऊंगा तो सिर्फ teaching ही होगी, इसमें और कुछ नहीं होगा. Is there any tips on time management? I am finding it difficult to manage time to study. Okay. Well, first of all, stop using social media, number 1. Number 2, follow a strict schedule, like a strict sleeping schedule. Okay. And कोशिश करो कि normally होता ही है कि, so it's always a trade-off. See, before iftar, we don't have the energy to study. After iftar, we eat so much, we're too lazy to study. Okay. So what you want to do is you want to utilize the time before iftar. Okay. So you want to make sure that you're studying well before iftar, so that if, let's say, you find yourself in the mood of studying after iftar, that's a bonus. Okay. So let's say you didn't study throughout the day before iftar, okay, hoping that you would be in the mood to study after iftar, and now all of a sudden you're done with iftar, you've eaten too much, you're too lazy, so you won't have, पूरा दिन ज़ाया हो गया. Okay. So do you recommend studying after? Yeah, definitely. That's the best time to study. Okay, I'm pretty sure फजर पढ़ते ही फ़ौरन नींद आती भी नहीं होगी. So मुझे तो नहीं आती at least. I don't know about you guys, but the most. So for me, the time, the work that requires the most effort, I reserve that for the time after Fajr, because that is when I know that I'll find the most peace, and I'm also fresh at that time. So that's why. So कौन से पेपर के क्वेश्चंस कर रहे हैं? कर रहे हैं नहीं, कर लिए. So recent वाले किए हैं सारे. 2022, 2020, 21. I think there was a 2017 question as well. Can you find area of triangle? Okay, so we're not finding the area of triangle. Keep that in mind. We're not finding the area of triangle. We're finding out the volume. And there's no such thing as volume of rectangle. Okay, so what we're doing is we're finding out the volume when a line is rotated 360 degrees about the y-axis or the x-axis, which then forms a cylinder. Okay. If it's area of shaded region, then yeah, of course you can find out the area of rectangle. Okay. Okay, I think I've already answered that. You should definitely do the yearly past papers. Yes, I will definitely recommend that. But the break that you take after 25 minutes, make sure you just take a walk or something. Don't use social media, because the problem is when we use social media, there's this thing called the residue effect. Okay, I read it in this book called Deep Work. So when you see something on social media, let's say your friend has posted something or anything, okay, then your attention, even though physically you're back, okay, you're studying after your 5-minute break, but आपका दिमाग जो है ना वो फिर उसी चीज़ में रहेगा. So you won't be able to concentrate 100%. So when you study for that 25 minute, when you do that 25-minute sprint, then for the 5-minute break, do not use social media. Okay, instead just take a walk or something. All right, now, so I'm gonna stop here. Right, I hope today's stream has helped you guys understand this concept. Okay, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Let me know what topic you guys want me to stream for A-level math. I was thinking functions, especially the transformation part. What do you guys think? Functions transformation, that's what I was thinking. What are your thoughts? Permutation, combination के concepts inshallah soon. वैसे honestly, I would suggest that if you watch the past paper videos, you will learn the concepts alongside. I'm pretty sure. Sir, circular measure करवाते हैं. Okay, I've done quite a few streams on circular measure. Why don't you check that out? Okay, so let's start functions. Functions, as we know, is spread all over. So we'll start with transformation of functions. Then we'll talk about domain and range as well. Okay, वो भी कर लेंगे, don't worry. And there's also domain and range of composite function. So don't worry, we'll do that as well. Okay, so that's it. Take care, everyone. Allah Hafiz.